But yeah, you just kind of just like you were saying, you went pro.
I wanted to go full contact to the knockout, and tournaments didn't allow that.
Hmm.
I wanted to have at least that opportunity, that experience of it's close, it's still a sport, however, you look at it, but at least you sort of learned what you were made out of, whether you could handle the pressure, the stress.
Yeah.
A lot of martial artists, I hate to say this, really don't know what it is to be hit. And the reason I say that, it's that as a martial artist, we could learn a lot of curriculum and we could learn technique and we can teach it. But if you don't know how you're going to respond in a situation where you're under a tremendous amount of stress and you're feeling that entire, adrenaline dump, then you're not going to know. And there's no better way than getting into the ring to see what you're made out of.
I totally agree. Like, just like for instance, I mean, not like with knife and stick and empty hand against knife. It's like if you don't experience that stress inoculation, and then you go on the street, it's going to be like your whole world is going to fall apart. And the fall is going to start up here, and then the physical stuff is just going to go. So yeah, I totally agree with that. As far as back there, I do have a question from Julius, and his question is regarding your program. Before we get into the FMA, is that you were known for extreme power and an incredible chin. How did you develop? Well, the power you could develop. But how did you develop the chin? I guess.
Well, I learned early on that as a smaller person, I used to fight as a bantamweight, which was 118 to 121. And for a female, I had very broad shoulders. And the key to never being knocked out for me, I was out on my feet once when I did a boxing exhibition with Hector Camacho Sr. in Florida. It's the last thing I did because he tagged me harder. But in terms of never getting knocked out, I believe that, again, my boxing trainers in the very beginning always stressed the importance of developing the muscles in your neck. And people think it's the chin that determines whether you get knocked out or not. But in reality, although I do have a chiseled, strong chin from thanks to my dad, but it has to do with the muscles in your neck. If you have strong neck, if you think about this is your neck and this is your head, when you get hit, all the repercussion and the energy, it's actually absorbing it. It's the neck. It's not the head. Yes, your brain smacks the back of your skull, whatever, and you get knocked out. But if you have a strong neck, so I've always stressed the importance of building your neck muscles. And back in the day when we were being trained as boxers, I did a lot of exercise for my neck. And I continue to do that over the years because I believe it's important. So that's, I think, why, one, I never got knocked out, even though I had a few near experiences.
Yeah, I know, but no, that makes sense. I mean, right, if your neck is really strong and sturdy, I mean, okay.
And in terms of power, you learn. Either you get hurt or you learn through your mistakes. You learn what doesn't work. And, I know we're going to talk about him more later, but my original teacher, Dan Inosanto, that's one huge takeaway I always had, that he would always say, you learn from the positive, but you learn from the negative, and you learn what not to do. Yeah. And so when you get hurt, you learn that as a smaller person, in order to generate power, one of the things you need to learn is to use your body. And I apply that date with my weapons. I believe it's so important to get behind your weapon as it is to get behind your punches, and learn to use body torque and move. And that's how a smaller person's going to generate power.
Yeah. Wow. No, great stuff. I mean, especially on the aspect of, you take away, like sometimes failures is the best teacher, right? You know what I mean? You're constantly succeeding, But all right, so let me just, I just want to make sure before we jump into FMA, I didn't miss anybody's questions regarding the pro career. Says with the world ours with our Thomas Ashiaro. Okay, I think we're good. His aggressiveness prior to Edwin Rosario. No, Edwin Rosario was never the same after Chavez. Who was my favorite boxer, by the way? Cesar Chavez. Why is he bringing up Edwin Rosario? Edgar Macho. Huh. Okay. All right. Anyway, all right. So, wow. So then, like, you. So at one point, you collectively stopped doing both. Was it when 80s?
I became like, the martial arts for me has been a 45-year journey to date. And like any journey, you go through changes, you take turns, you just go through, you evolve. And I went through a period of time that I just became sort of disenchanted with the martial arts, with the politics, with a lot. And I really, and a person who had a huge influence on me was, late Clifford Stewart, who was a dear friend of mine and my training partner for many, many years. We evolved our systems together. And when I first started the Kali Academy, it was always Cliff, myself, and Larry Hartzell. The three of us spent a lot of time and years together.
Oh, wow.
And, he used to always tell me, what is it that you really want to do in terms of, your martial arts? It's all in the street. And he would always emphasize the importance of, like, I would be excited because I would be doing something new and fancy that I learned. And he would just kind of look at me and go, really? Like, is that going to work? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Yeah. So he always kept me in check. And so I went through a period of time because he, as my mentor, where I started going towards defensive tactics. And I took every possible course. I started studying with Masad Ayub and his Lethal Force Institute in New Hampshire at the time. I went through all of his curriculum, which was hundreds and hundreds of hours of defensive tactics and firearm training. I studied, Bruce Siddle and PPCT, which was pressure point control tactics before Dillman was around and it was getting popular. And it was just, I just really started focusing more on defensive tactics and working more. And I became a member of ASLIT, the American Society of Law Enforcement Trainers, and spent quite a few years developing myself in that area. I felt like I had gaps of knowledge. And to this day, I always teach there's art, there's sport, and there's street. So what is it that you're doing and what is your focus?
Yeah, right.
Period of time that I really got involved more with the blade, but not so much artistically, but more street, and moved in that direction. And then you sort of come full circle. You miss the art and you come back to the art and you go, there's value in it. There's believe it or not, there is value to Kibadachi, a horse stance, where you go through a period in your life where you throw all that out. You go, why am I doing all this traditional stuff? But yet I started here, I started very traditional. So develop some kind of attributes. And so those are some of the changes that, one goes through as much, I would think.
No, right. And what are you going to do? Fight your whole life? I mean, geez, yeah. So then, all right, let's jump into FMA. So your first, I always like to find out from everybody is who, your first initial experience, I guess, who and when?
So I always have to start with my introduction to Guru Dan was I was fighting, and I was working with Paul Maslach, who was editor of, I think, Inside Kung Fu at the time, one of those magazines. And he was trying to help me sort of learn the ropes. When I moved to Los Angeles from now UCSB, I'd graduated. And I was fighting a lot. And when you would see me after the fight, you would think I lost the fight, even though I might have most of my knockouts were in the first or second round. So I won my fights, but I looked horrific. I either had a black eye or my nose was swollen. And he said, you know what? I know somebody that can help you because you're a slugger. You take one or two punches to give one, even though you're stronger and ultimately you knock her out, but you're taking a beating. And I was taking a beating in the boxing gym because I only train with men. And I was, I started at Hoover Street Boxing Gym in Los Angeles. And then when my trainer, Hap Holloway at the time, kind of left the business. He introduced me to Jimmy Montoya, who had several world champions. He had the largest boxing stable in the world probably at that time. So I only trained with men, and they weren't that forthcoming in terms of trying to help me. They just kind of saw me as a nuisance, like, let's get her out of here. You know, what is she doing here? She's kind of in our way, and we want to get our rounds in. So Paul said to me, I know the perfect person that you can learn from, and will teach you more lateral movement. You'll learn footwork. You will develop your skills so you're not taking such a beating. And he took me to the small kind of office school building on Washington Boulevard in Culver City at the time, and introduced me to Dan Inosanto. Wow. And that's when I met him. And it was amazing because for me, when I walked in there, at that point in time, have never held a weapon in my life. In all my
you're right. You're going
years, but I'd never worked with weapons. I was a boxer, kickboxer, huarango. We did a lot of throws and did some weaponry, but it was a totally different experience. And I saw the Kali, I heard the sticks, and it was just crazy because I just wouldn't look at that and I said, wow, this is something I want to do.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction, and where everybody at that time was more into the Jun Fan and the Jeet Kune Do. To me, that was like kind of boring because there were so many similar principles to what I'd already learned.
You were seeing.
I don't know disrespect, but to me, the Filipino martial arts was just so awesome and different. And that was my introduction. That was like 79 or 80.
79. Okay. Also, really? So was he at that time? Was he still? Was it the Kali Academy still with?
Well, interesting because 2 or 3 nights a week it was the Dan Inosanto Kali Academy. This is before he moved to Marina del Rey, and the other nights it was a Hawkins Chung Wing Chun school. So we shared a school with another group, a Wing Chun school, and we really never saw them because we were there on different nights.
Okay.
And at that time, they also had the IMB Academy in Torrance.
Oh, so they are some separation. Okay.
So he was teaching at both places.
Yeah, I heard he would. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So and the time you're referencing there, when when you first met him, did you actually? I know you're saying you're seeing the sticks on that, but you didn't actually jump into class at that point. You're just more of an observer.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. What was the question?
So that first time you met him and all that, and you're seeing, was it you more just an observer that one time, or did you actually jump in?
I believe I jumped in the class, and I stayed there off and on for 8 years after that before I moved on. I would sit there and I would watch, and there was like, back then there was only phase 1, 2, and 3 classes. They didn't have all the ranking that they do today. And so I would do my phase 1 class and sit there and watch. And then eventually he'd say, come on, you want to jump in? And I got to do phase 2. And then before I knew it, I was training in all 3 classes. Yeah. And I would just stay, and, I became a groupie. I was there all the time. And I would go afterwards. There was many times where we'd go to the local Chinese restaurant, and as we'd say, listen to him tell us stories about, his adventures. It was fascinating.
Wow. 79. I mean, that's, geez. Wow. I mean, so besides the sticks on that, what was your initial, and you kind of touched on it already, but just from like you said, you came from a kicking, punching background, forms, what have you. And now you're seeing sticks, and I'm guessing most of the curriculum was sticks, not knife yet. What was your takeaway? Besides the intriguement of seeing the sticks.
I was learning something very unique and very different, and it was sort of it's not something I could really put into words. It's just a connection I had with the art. And I just felt connected, like I belonged. It was just so natural for me, and I picked it up, and fairly quickly. But I can't even express just the feeling I have. I just love the Filipino martial arts. I love the weapons. It's kind of interesting because when I think back, it wasn't the first. I said it's the first time I worked with weapons. But my family, at one point in time, my father used to take us up Northern California, and in the summers to kind of, teach us, develop a strong work ethic. We would pick grapes and prunes and whatever. We would clear out crops. And when I think back, that was my first introduction to a blade, because I was excited as a young kid that I had my own blade to cut grapes with. And it was like it was an interesting small blade. So I guess I could say as a young kid, I was introduced to the blade early on. Yeah, to get good with it. Otherwise, you'd cut yourself. So,
yeah.
but
Ugh.
other than that, in terms of, I don't know, I love the culture. I love the history. Guru Dan used to tell us so much of the history of the art. And my ethnicity is, my parents are both from Mexico. So for me, there's that connection of, through the Philippines and the
Yeah,
Spaniards. It was
yeah.
a really strong connection.
Wow. So I figure just while we're at the, talking about the Inosanto blend in the academy, what over like you were there 8 years and all that, but through that 8 years, like what changes did you see within, I guess, the curriculum? Yeah, I mean, were there certain systems that were emphasized? I mean, I know it's a long time ago, so I mean,
So when I was there at the academy, the way I always saw it was Guru Dan was on his own odyssey, and by that I meant he was excited about learning from different instructors, and whoever he was learning from, that's the phase we were in.
yeah.
And so it took me a couple of years to I always saw it as I'm getting one piece of the puzzle here, because when we start, we're doing maybe kickboxing, and then we went through a silat phase, and then we went to a Muay Thai phase, and then we went to a silat phase, and then we went through, different phases. So whatever he was into, that's what we were focusing on. So it was interesting. And he would bring different instructors, and he would bring Professor Wally J would come. He would have, Grandmaster Leo Gahe would come and train. He always would introduce us to different martial arts systems so that we could be exposed and see what was also out there. But the entire time that I was there, it was, back then when you got ranked, he just walked up to you and handed you a certificate, and you went, "Oh, wow, okay." It was very different. And it wasn't until I left that things really changed, where they started coming up with very specific structured curriculum. And that's one of the things I did find very difficult, was that as a martial artist, if you're a beginner and you walked into a school, very difficult. I already had years of training, and it was difficult for me to go, okay, I see the connection. I see the principles. I see where Jun Fan fits in. Oh, I'm sorry. We went through a Wing Chun phase, and William Chung would come and teach. So we would go through these different phases early on, but they were, I don't want to say the connection. They weren't totally, it was progressive in his presentation, but you had to figure it out. You had to figure out where the pieces fit, and it fit differently for every person that was there, right?
Yeah,
you would gravitate towards what you preferred. Chai used to come and train with us, and we would do Muay Thai. So everything was separate. And the reason I found it difficult is when I started teaching, that's when you go, oh, shoot. When someone comes to you and say, well, what are you teaching? Well, I do Jun Fan, but I'm a boxer, but I'm a kickboxer. But no, I do Eskrima, but no, I'm teaching jiu-jitsu. It was very, very difficult to package it. And that's what I believe he did years later, was really develop a structure and the curriculum so it could be taught in a more organized, structured manner.
Which was I mean, it could have been easy. I mean, just looking through the lens of him without being there. I mean, it couldn't have been easy for him to try to, with all the things that he was exposed to, the systems, all that, and then try to compile and make a system that's congruency and a good blend for students. I mean, that couldn't have been easy. I don't know. I'm just thinking. I know for me, it wouldn't have been.
I don't think that was his concern at the time. I think years later, when it became more of a business that he had to evolve himself in that way, then it became more, he had obviously, he had assistance in structuring it. It's all coming from him, but maybe somebody helping him with that.
Yeah, right, as time is going on.
But
so you were there 8 years, and then because I know you've gone into other systems. Did you go into the other systems while you were still at the academy, or
I did. And at one point, one of the instructors in the styles that I was exposed through Guru Dan was Serrada Eskrima. And the traditional way is you go to your teacher, and I went to Guru Dan and said, is it okay with you? Do you mind if I go and I continue I want to train more with him. I want to learn more. And he's like, oh, definitely go for it. And I was training off and on with Grandmaster Nari Babao and different people, John DeYoung, who's all these great people are no longer with us. But he was very encouraging, and he encouraged all his students to explore, to go out, because that's who he was. He was constantly searching and wanting to learn more, and he was always curious about what somebody else had to offer. But that one particular system, I again really liked because it complemented my body type. It complemented me. It was more of a close quarter, and as a fighter, I was a very effective inside fighter. I was one of the few females that really, I think, mastered body shots, going to the body, where most women did not. And I was an inside fighter. And so the Serrada Eskrima, if I'm sure you're familiar with it, it utilizes a smaller stick. It's like 21 inches.
Yeah, 24, 21.
Versus the 28. So I liked it. And what I liked about it was that it wasn't ornamented. It wasn't ornamented, and it was more direct. It was more explosive. That's where I started learning about really generating more power in my strikes. So I became an advanced instructor in that system, and I think at that time I was the only female he'd ever promoted to that level.
I was gonna say, back then,
and it was very different than it is now, because my training with Grandmaster Angel Cabales was usually in his apartment in a very small space. I have very fond memories of him, but the first time I went to Stockton, I drove, and usually Cliff would go with me because he was like, come on, we're going to go train. I go, okay, will you go with me? Will you drive to Stockton with me? It's only like a 4-hour drive. And he would go with me. He said, but the very first time I went, he says, I have to go because my wife's in the hospital. And I go, my son is arriving today. So he had an infant, and then he had Janelle. So we would train in between. There was a baby. I mean, they're all grown now, and I wish I haven't seen them since. But there was a baby playpen like on one side, and I have videos of the kids walking through with holding a stick or something while we were training. And,
oh my gosh!
And we would train for hours, and we take breaks. We sit down, have coffee, and then we keep training some more.
Yeah, cool. Like those times, treasure, right? Gosh,
exactly. Yeah.
Different era for sure. So then, so who? I mean, because you had, obviously back then, there were a ton of guest instructors coming in. So I know you took a liking to the Cabales system and all that. Any others that you trained
Professor
in?
Wally J. I really continued training off and on any opportunity that I got. Later on, learning the jiu-jitsu. William Chung, I started studying privately with William Chung, and then I got to travel to Australia several times and taught at his school, did seminars at his school, and those were the systems that I appreciated, or I don't want to say I valued more, but that I had the opportunity to learn more.
Okay. How about, we got one question here. Did you ever get to train with GM Ben Largusa?
No, I knew him. I never physically, I got to attend one of his classes on Kauai because when I was writing for Black Belt Magazine, I got to interview a lot of I would go and I would spend time with the Floraville family, and I would sit there with him and talk to him. But I never, Grandmaster Villabreau had already had a stroke at that time, and it was more storytelling. I never physically got to train with him. And Ben Largusa, I knew him. I would visit and we would talk, but I never had the pleasure of being his student.
Yeah, I know. Wow, okay. So, what is all right? So after the academy, did you continue FMA, and if so, with whom?
I continued training I continued. By then I was teaching more, and my next experience and another instructor who made a huge impact on me was Grandmaster Bobby Tabuada. I was now living in West Virginia, and so I would fly to Charlotte to train with him. And I met him when I was doing a demonstration at a Five Rings martial arts event in North Carolina. And he had just started. He was like sort of fresh off the boat, so to speak. And he wasn't really doing seminars at the time. And he was just such an incredible, unbelievable martial artist. And I saw his demonstration. I was just blown away. And it's, to me, as a smaller person, what's very attractive is explosiveness and power. When you think of how can you generate power, because you're at a disadvantage in size. And what I saw in him was a tremendous amount of explosiveness. And I have to go back and tell you a quick little story. When I was at Danny's school, I would get frustrated because I was, as I said earlier, I was more of a slugger. I didn't have a lot of finesse. So with the stick, I wasn't as ornamented, and I wasn't as pretty as some of the other students there. I mean, that they could twirl a stick, and it was incredible. And one time when I was talking to Grandmaster Flora Villabril, I asked him, it was like, Master, how can I get better with my stick? It was one of those situations. I said, I want to learn how to really, twirl. And this was like in the mid 80s. And because I'm not as good as the other guys in the academy, it was always that, because I was like the only female there at the time, instructor, and all the guys were there. And he looked at me and he said, because, Grandmaster Flora Villabril was known for all of his death matches. He said, my number one technique for me, he said, that would knock out to the death. And I said, no, what is it? He says, left hook. I go, left hook. And he says, forget about all that. He said, left hook, have a good left hook, and it will save you every time. And I left there with a lot of confidence. And I guess he was trying to tell me that there's art, there's sport, and there's street.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it, don't worry about being too flowery. It's, and something that was really important to me that I learned was that everything you do with your weapon should have a purpose. I mean, if you're twirling your stick, it's because you're hitting the temple, you're hitting the neck, you're hitting a target. It's not, unless you're doing a warm up for coordination drills, but you see a lot of really flowery ornamented stuff, but it should have a purpose. And so for me, training with Bobby Tabuada was even at a higher level of explosiveness than I had gotten from the Serrada. If you've seen him move, he's like unbelievable, and incredible footwork and light. He was a big guy. He's leaner now, but he was like a big hefty guy then. And he was so light on his feet. It was so impressive.
Yeah, I had him on here. He was.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah. I mean, it was. I'm glad he came on. So then, okay, so Balintawak. Anything after Balintawak?
Besides just doing seminars here and there, no, not really.
You're not active. I mean, you're still training.
Oh yeah, I train I develop my own system, and I teaching a lot in training, and I've always told even my black belts, where I left a bunch of, group in West Virginia, and I've always told them, look, what you've learned already is enough for you to keep going. And so that's how I feel right now. I feel like even though I haven't found my next instructor, I train with Ron Baliki. Whenever he's available, I'm always on him. Can I train? Can we train? There's really nobody out here to train with. And he's phenomenal. And he's very gracious, about sharing knowledge. And, but so I guess I would say I do train. But once you become an instructor, as you know, it's more difficult. And I've spent years just working on my own stuff in one of the things that I learned all the years with Guru Dan was that it's important to have, some form of structure. If you're teaching, you have to have curriculum. And, and I have 2 master's degrees, and one of them is physical education and health, and the other in counseling. And one of the things that I did for years was developing curriculum for the college where I worked at, besides being a counselor and a professor. And that's when I learned that, it hit me that it's important to have structure. So I've spent years taking what I've learned, and I want to say it's not an original thought, but it's how you put things together. If you want to
Okay.
pass something on, I can't teach the way Guru Dan the way I learned, because students they would leave. It's only a few students are going to stick around and go through it. So if you go through that entire process, now it's up to you to take what you've learned and package it and develop structure. And I've developed my own formula that I've taught for years, that it's based on a lot of what I learned from Guru Dan and some of my other instructors. And it's based on range, and I have a specific formula that I use that I feel cuts the time down for a person to learn, and doesn't take, shouldn't take you 5 years to become proficient at something.
Yeah. Wow. No, I loved it. That was great. I got one more question here, just regarding what I guess what could you say as far as all the systems you've been exposed to and all that? Like, well, I guess let's start with Balintawak and the Serrada system. One of the questions from somebody else here is the compare and contrast of the two. I guess what would you say to that as far as those two systems?
Well, I think the Serrada Eskrima is oftentimes misunderstood, and it's hard because we're just speaking without physically demonstrating it. But when I think of Serrada comes from the Spanish language to close, it's close quarter. But people often think that it means that I'm moving, if you're my opponent, that I'm moving close to you. I mean, this is obviously my interpretation. This is my interpretation of the system. But what in observing, Grandmaster Cabales and what I learned, I believe that it's more you being able to effectively, with power, move around your own body. And what I mean by that, if you are in a very confined space, like all my training took place in probably just not even, it was just a small area in an apartment where there wasn't any place to move. So if you can effectively generate power in a confined space, whether you're here to be able to hit and move and not have the big space, then that's critical, because the reality of it is when you translate that to the real world, most likely you're not going to be in an open field. You're going to be somewhere where maybe you have your wife with you, maybe you have your kids with you, there's bodies around you, there's people around you, and how can you effectively move? And if I'm saying effectively, pull off whatever tactic you're using, and not injure the people around you, and also deal with a threat. So for me, Serrada is critical, and people understand that you have to be able to move in a confined space and generate power. Not necessarily, it doesn't mean that I'm getting so close to you that you're going to hit me with your free hand or whatever. Balintawak, I think it's a further range. It's more intermediate range, a lot of the movements, but it's tremendously efficient. And I think I love the explosiveness of it. And it's an incredible art. I still like to learn, and I'm still wanting to learn. And by the way, I also compete in Filipino stick fighting. So that's how
we're going to touch on that. Oh yeah,
that's how I keep myself. You need goals. You get bored, you get stagnant. So you have to keep doing something. But that's the way I see the two systems.
No, I mean, I think you're right. Like I've seen, like just I've watched probably his videos and all that, and just like again from that range, the power he can generate, it's pretty, it's pretty phenomenal. Just
I'm sorry, you said you watch too?
I'm sorry, what?
I didn't hear who you said you watch.
No, as I said, watching, Master Bobby, the power he generates is pretty phenomenal. I mean, it's so much to what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely. When you so I guess before we leave, I want to make sure I miss any questions before we get into when you start teaching. Let me just see here. Methodology of the board was all fasting. Okay, I got another question here regarding how is Richard Bustillo's approach different to Guru Dan's approach?
I felt that I always saw Richard Bustillo as a fighter. We connected because of the boxing, and
Yeah, he's big
And
on that, huh?
there was a lot of mutual respect there because he was a fighter. He was more of a no nonsense, functional, more street.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a chance to be certified under him, um,
Okay.
and I said no. Um, Looking back, I'm not sure why I said that. But what I really did admire about him was his really emphasis on boxing,
Yeah.
and all that. Like, I thought that was fantastic. And he didn't put, and at the time, he didn't seem to put much emphasis the time I was around him on the trapping and all that. But I really enjoyed his whole thing on the empty hand, the boxing. I thought it was fantastic. Um, and sadly, as we all know, his unfortunate passing. But so, all right, guys, the questions keep coming in. Is your okay? When we get to I'll ask that so we don't jump ahead here. In a demonstration. Oh my God, you were in a film, Breathing Fire. Oh my God. All right, man, I got a lot to cover here. All right, let's jump into. So when did you? Okay, I know you started teaching soon, but I guess in conjunction when you started teaching, when is it that you kind of came up with your own system? Like I guess approximate year or so.
So, so another story. It was the late '80s, and I was at a point in my life where I felt like it was time for me to leave the academy and kind of go off on my own and do my own thing. And I was sitting at a coffee shop with, I don't know if you know Eric Lee, the Little King of Kata, who is a good friend of mine. Eric Lee, and he was huge in the tournament circuit and forums champion.
Okay.
And we were talking about what I teach and how I teach and packaging and he's always been a great businessman. And I was saying, well, I don't know what to do because I'm doing private lessons. But at that time I was just sort of making a living. I was a martial arts gypsy. I'd have my stick bag and I was working with a few celebrities and working with different people, but I would get, I don't know if the word is insecure when they say, well, what do you teach? And I would kind of look at them. I go, well, you boxing, or kickboxing, eskrima, self-defense. What do you want? And it didn't go well with marketing. You can't market what is it that you do? You kind of do everything. And so he was telling me you need to come up with a label, an umbrella, something that you can put everything underneath and create a structure. And so actually Eric came up with a name called Shin Shin Do, which at that point in time just meant the way of the warrior spirit. And warrior spirit was not popular. Now everything is warrior spirit. But in the 80s, it wasn't very popular. And so that just gave me a label so that I could create my curriculum to go underneath that and create a ranking system. Okay. And that was late 80s when I was teaching. It was easier to package into market, and it wasn't original system, as I said earlier. It was more how I organized it and how I developed the curriculum for the system. And at that point in time, the person that also helped me a lot was like Cliff Stewart, because he was developing War Within Arm's Reach, and I was working on my system. And so we did a lot of collaborating with each other on developing our systems. But
now though you're under a different name. You're under Casillas. What is your?
The name of my school was, Shin Shin Do was more. It's kind of like I don't want to say personal. It was just like I never really promoted it. It's just people say, well, what is it that you teach? This is my system, but it's not. When I say it's not original, because I don't think you really. I don't want to say anything's original. But it's already been done. It's just a question of your interpretation of it. I can't claim something that, I learned so much from Guru Dan. And if I had to say who was the biggest influence on me, it was him, because that was my introduction to the Filipino martial arts. And that's where I really spent the most time. And so many of the principles that I teach are based on his teaching. You do emulate what you believe in. And if you meet somebody that's like-minded, that you share the same value system, well, that's what you're going to promote.
Yeah.
So I've always gone back and forth, and I sometimes I want to get rid of the name, and it's like you go through that. And but my school was Casillas Martial Arts because I'm Casillas, and it was Martial Arts Academy because it wasn't only Shinshundo that was taught there. We were teaching, we had Muay Thai, somebody teaching Muay Thai kickboxing, I had somebody doing boxing. I had different a professor, Jeff Lane would teach, who's phenomenal instructor, would teach, traditional Kodokan Jiu-Jitsu. So I had different instructors at the school.
Wow. So, I guess as far as the FMA styles, what did you pull from it?
My probably biggest influence in the Filipino martial arts to date would be Serrada because of the principles of the range that I love living more in that range than I do in the other ranges. But I teach it all. I mean, I teach Eskrima as I was taught by Guru Dan. But more some of the principles and movement, you'll see more Serrada.
All right. So if somebody new was to, select you as a teacher and all that, they would get more of the Serrada flair, so to speak.
It depends who's watching, because I've had people say, "Oh, I can tell you train with Guru Dan," and you can't. It's you're going to emulate your instructor, regardless whether you can't.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've done with all my black belts is I've really tried to impress on them the importance of them developing their own movement of style. And that's the one thing I've always loved of the Filipino martial arts, that in traditional systems, it must be a certain way. I don't care if you're 5 foot tall versus 6 feet tall. Everybody it's got to be exact. The fingers, everything has to be exact.
And for my Taekwondo.
Filipino martial arts, because it was such a, I don't say progressive art, but such a free-flowing art that is based on more reflex developing than anything. And that's why I love the Filipino martial arts, because when you think about it, to me, the highest level of training is developing your reflexes, because everything else is pretty much gone. But if you can react to a threat just as you scratch your head when you have an itch, to me, that's more valuable than learning techniques or memorizing.
I'm with you, man. I mean, perception and reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what you're going to need out there. I don't care what I memorize. Wow, that was great. Yeah, definitely agree on that. This is a good one. I'm going to be interested in hearing this one. What was her favorite area of Kali to train? Single stick, single knife, double stick, double knife, or etc.
Next to the blade is single stick.
Yeah, I'm a knife guy.
My favorite was Siniwala, even though I value it and I think it's very important. But I get bored with it. Single stick and blade.
And I know it's a knife for me, because that's more likely what I'm going to see out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I train like. I mean, if somebody comes up with a stick, I mean, that'll be interesting.
But see, the principle is there, right? That if you're learning the stick, you should be learning the blade. Obviously with some modification, but you should be getting two for the price of one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. And Master Bram, don't forget to ask her about her love of knives and knife designs. Well, since knife is your favorite, so I guess we can touch on this. So your love of knives and knife designs.
I was running late and I went to grab my blade because I did design a knife, the Lady Hawk, again in the 80s.
Bram showed me
And I would design it differently today, a little bit bigger than I did. But I think when it comes to blade training, knife, I think one of the most important aspects is weapon retention and really cutting. And I don't think that it's taught enough. I think oftentimes we mistake an art form for street and what we learn, and it changes it's very different in the streets. I've been attacked by with a knife, and it's it's not what you learn in the dojo. It's again, instinctive reaction has to be there. and you are probably going to get cut. I know I was, but I think that people think that having a bigger knife is maybe has a psychological effect on someone, but I would trade that for a smaller blade. And I started grabbing my blade because when you think of weapon retention, especially for a smaller individual, whether you're male or female, when somebody tries to take your blade away, if their flesh is going to meet with blade, it's going to be harder for them to disarm you than it is if you have a large knife that somebody can still grab onto. So I prefer a smaller blade.
Yeah, the longer blade, it's a bigger lever for disarm for the yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you get a small 2-3 inch or something like that, it becomes more charm. Yeah.
But once again, when I think of the Filipino martial arts, I think they're the most superior art when it comes to the blade. But a large part of that is because of that building reflexes. And I know that when I train with even Grandmaster Angel Cabales, most of the time he didn't speak. He just moved and hit you. If you knew, he would once in a while, he would correct and adjust my hand, or, if he's doing a certain move, he would move my hand. But most of the time it was just, you had to be on your toes and you had to move. And that's the way you learned. But you start building your reflexes that way. And I believe in drills are important. And I think that, we talk about the issue with, the classical mess, why drills are not good and techniques are not good. But I think if you know nothing, you need structure to at least learn the principle. The hardest part, and everybody that trains knows that, and you learn a box pattern, try to get rid of it.
Box pattern sobrada. Yeah, right.
Then you spend your whole life trying to get rid of it because you fall into the pattern. And so to me, a higher level of training is obviously not to have those patterns, but to be able to really react. You're doing Siniwali, it's one thing to do heaven, standard, earth, and all the combinations, but try just to try to react to a broken pattern. That's not a pattern. That's a lot more difficult than it is. It's real easy to memorize movements, but to really make them your own, it's not as easy. And that's it requires a different mindset.
No, that was great. Wow. No, absolutely. I just want to make sure I'm just not missing anybody's questions. She gave the secret away. Okay, we covered that. Okay, so where can we find information about your curriculum? From Mr.
Well, interesting enough that I'm right now in the process of developing an entire platform of instruction with some of you may know Farbors Jacques. He's a good friend and also a great martial artist. He has Team Karate Centers in Woodland Hills, California, and I'm developing. So just stay tuned. Okay. I'll post it as soon as we should have been finished by this week, but unfortunately, I had a few setbacks, and then with the passing of my friend Cliff, I just kind of stopped everything and took a pause and trying to get back on track now with that. Yeah. So, there's been a lot going on.
But all right, no, absolutely. But safe to say, we should be seeing an announcement from you.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. No.
I also have a book out, but I'm not really good at marketing. Otherwise, I'd have my book here and go, here's my book called The Lioness Within. And it's a book more on the psychology and the mental aspects of self-defense. It's on Amazon, but.
We got to cover that. All right. Okay, let's go. Just want to make sure we got. All right. This is kind of parallels. We're on your. Are you making any DVDs? Anything or that coming down the pipeline?
Anyway.
Any DVDs that you'll be making ever?
I didn't know anybody even wanted DVDs anymore. You said DVDs?
Yeah, the question on here was, would you be making any new stream of DVDs?
Well, but it'll all be online, but yes.
So
Yes,
you'll stream it, like streaming. Okay, yeah, same thing. Okay,
it'll be online.
yeah, sure. All right, this is from Joe Rebello. Ask her about the World Martial Arts VHS Laserdisc in the early 1980s. She was the first female FMA demonstration on the video demonstrating Sinawali. So do you recall what Joe's?
Can you repeat that, please?
So Joe's asking about the World Martial Arts VHS laser disc in the early 1980s. She was the first female FMA demonstration on the video demonstrating Sinawali.
Was this Al Thomas World of Martial Arts? I believe it was. I think it was Al Thomas World of Martial Arts. It was a lot of fun. It was myself, Karen Shepard, Benny Urquidez. I don't remember if Don Wilson was part of this, but there was a group of us, and it was fun. It was nice to be able to start promoting the art and demonstrating it. But I think if that's, I'm not sure.
He mentions, I think you're correct. He's saying here instruction with Al Thomas.
Yes, that was it.
Okay.
And it was actually a big budget production. It was through not Universal Studios. Someone promoted it, and it was very nicely done. Trying to think of Mitz Yamashita. Was it Mitz? Jiu-Jitsu champion. There was just different people, and we demonstrated we put together the curriculum for that. It was Budo Kwan, or I can't remember.
Budo Jiu-Jitsu, I think he mentioned that here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Yes, you did Sinawali with Victor.
Oh, with Victor.
Okay, yep. All right. And thank you to Arlene. She's posting your book on here.
Thank you. You think I have it with me, but
no worries. But we got it right here. We got it covered. And does she have a YouTube? Yes. Your YouTube channel is, I got it right here. It's basically Graciela Casillas, just her name, her YouTube channel. So then your students, what do you try? I mean, I know we got the COVID situation going on, so I know you probably haven't seen, except for the exception of Zoom online, but when you were having classes, what do you try to stress to your students? Like, I mean, outside of obviously giving them physical content.
Well, I think that, doing Zoom is better than nothing.
Absolutely.
So I think it's really lacking. I've had a difficult time with it because I just feel like you can't, I'm a very hands-on, Scream is very tactile. You have to touch, you have to feel a person's energy. And so that has been the biggest challenge for me, to feel the frustration of not being able to be there, obviously in person, with the person that you're teaching. I haven't done any group. I've been doing private lessons through Zoom, and I'm getting by. But I just, the main point I would make that it's important is the mental training. It's that, just as I mentioned yesterday, it's refreshing to interact, and even if we're doing it through this venue, it's better than not. And so I think the main thing is to keep your mind sharp. You have to keep your mind stimulated, whether you're physically training with other people or not. When we first started, I was in my backyard because that's where I hang out with Bob and my tires. But the lighting wasn't good there. But that's where I spend my time. I beat up on Bob. I put a collie stick fighting vest on him, and I work with him because I don't have anybody to train with right now. But
I know it's been, God, it's miserable.
But I think there's so much you can do on your own, like in terms of, especially in Eskrima, you have the whole world of Carenza, and that has always been my go-to. I put music on that I like, and I take a sword and I move, and you could break a sweat doing that. You could, if you think of doing 4 rounds or doing a 20-minute nonstop, you'll be exhausted.
No, no, I mean, no, for sure. Yeah, right.
So,
I mean, definitely you can work attribute development. I mean, yeah, non-tell, your power, your speed. I mean, there's a ton of stuff you can work on. But yeah, but I mean, in fairness, though, nothing beats having partners. But yeah,
right.
I mean, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Like you said, you gotta keep the mind motivated and stimulated, So um I mean, but but you're still, I mean, before COVID kicked in, I mean, were you still teaching group classes?
Oh, absolutely. I had a school here, an academy, and we had a lot of classes. We were teaching kids from 5 years old and up. So I had traditional jujitsu classes with, as I mentioned earlier, with a Professor Jeff Lane, who's awesome and a really great teacher. And he taught, the Kodokan Danzanryu Jiu-Jitsu. We had a variety of courses, conditioning courses with Jess Sepulveda, another really good conditioning coach. And, I taught the Screama, and we just had a variety of classes. So we were active, and then it
Uh,
just all came to an end. And in our situation out here, we never were really ever able to recover because we still can't open. So, so that's that. That's the end of
no,
that.
I know that man. I know that really stinks. So, but when you were, I mean, when you were open and all that, and I mean, obviously you must have had like, wide range of students as far as levels and all that. Like, what were some like? What do you try to still in your students? Ones that, generally speaking, ones that have been around you for a while and all that. I mean, like outside the physical techniques and content, but like far as character and what have you, like what you try and instill in them.
Uh, we have a very holistic approach at our school, and it's sort of like an extended family. I'm involved in other aspects. I mean, we even had a tutoring center within the school, so we really took interest in our students. We check in with them. We would give them, reports that they'd have to even take to school. This is for the younger ones, and we do supplemental applications to find out like what are they going through. But some of the main principles that we would say that are non, physical is teaching them how to problem solve, teaching them how to be more assertive. We were just in the process of starting a leadership course for all the younger kids that are, were interested, but teaching them how to be fighters in life, because the martial arts, the martial arts goes beyond kicking and punching. What you learn as a martial artist, and hopefully people, instructors are still teaching this, but it is to have integrity. It is to be respectful. I always tell the little kids, please, thank you, you're welcome goes a very long way in life. And this is, we're teaching these little kids, and it's kind of extended family. If, we'll grab somebody and say, hey, excuse me, did you, oh, yes, ma'am, no, sir. We try to, one of the main things we try to instill in them is to be respectful for one another. And that goes outside of the school, but just basic values and morals that we would like to think that they're learning at home. So that's not our role to teach them that, but we can reinforce it. And we never tell parents where these kids are not learning because the parents they're gone or they're not available. So, we teach them and we try to reinforce what we're assuming that they're learning at home. Problem solving is huge for me. It's like teaching a kid or even adults, how to deal with things in life that normally you'd turn and just walk away or you would give up. And you need to learn that if there's, problem, solution, change, this is what the kids chant, that they need to know the difference. And Ellie, can you grab my book?
Yeah.
So principles like that, basics that, that they should be learning. And we hope that
Yeah. Wow, sounds like you had a great place there. Like, what I mean? Like you're saying you had a tutor come in and all that.
we
That's
have a room. We have a tutoring center there, and so our kids that are that are martial arts students, they get tutored there, or they can hang out there till the parents get off work.
That's fantastic, though.
Setup. Yeah.
I never heard of school that like went to those limits of having like a tutor.
There are quite a few here in California that are doing way beyond
Not
what
out here. Not that I'm aware of anyhow.
Yeah.
But I think that's fantastic. Wow. That's super. What about what about far as like one of the things I think I recalled, watching some of the YouTube interviews that you were being interviewed by on the self-defense. And something that you mentioned that really resonated with me, and something I try to instill in my students, is that you want them to like be better than you. And just, what's your take on that? Why is that important to you? I mean, I totally agree with it, but I'd like just your view, and the audience can hear your view on that.
Wanting them to be better.
Why are you trying to make your students better than you? Why you want them to become better than you? As far as.
Well, I think that for any instructor, a true like proof that you've done well, that you've taught your students well, and I don't like to use cliches, but some are very appropriate, and this one I think is being a guide, a pointer of the way. Is always been important to me, to be a multiplier versus a diminisher, someone who sees something in a student and helps them evolve themselves and helps them become better. Because oftentimes, one of the basic issues with young people and young people, but adults also, is that oftentimes you see in them what they don't see. You believe in them more than they believe in themselves. And oftentimes students just need somebody to believe in them. Somebody to say, hey, you're really good at this, or wow, and even if they're not perfect, but to give them that push, that encouragement is going to make them want to make them want to be better. So I think that's really important. But for me, it's for me, job well done. If you're better than I am, and I have, my black belts, a lot of them are young. And they're better than me. They're faster than me. And I think, okay, but one thing my friend Cliff always used to tell me, he says, Graciela, when you teach, he says, remember, you know everything they know, but they don't know everything you know. And you always keep something for yourself. And I go, okay, you're right. You don't let them know. You don't give it all to them, because then it's left, right?
Keep a secret or two.
So I think that's important.
Yeah, it's something I agree with you. Like, you want them to be better than you. I mean, what is the best like product, like to show, like for your work that that you were part of this creation? Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Wow. So I'll make sure I'm not missing any other questions. All right, there's a film. So before we get into some other things here, the breathing fire. So apparently, what's the breathing fire?
I've been thinking of Fire in the Night, the film I did.
He's saying breathing, but maybe he's off. But he's saying breathing fire, where she demonstrates FMA, and he's saying a movie.
If it was a film, it was a film I did called Fire in the Night.
Okay, maybe that's okay.
Maybe that she's referring to that. I don't know. Because in terms of demonstrations, I apologize. I've done so many demonstrations. I mean, I've done demonstrations from Northern California to a bull ring. I remember Guru Dan and I did a demonstration in Mexico City in a bull ring with live blades. Remember the swords that spark, the real cool ones? And
yeah. It was Fire in the Night. It was
Fire in the Night.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a funny story. I was hired to train the actress because it was Filipino martial arts. And to this day, I can't tell you why, but 3 days later, I ended up being the lead in the role and did the film.
Wow.
And it was the first film I'd ever done. So those of you who have watched it, I'd never had an acting class. It was terrible, but...
Hey, wait a minute. Oh, so that's, I'm gonna have to check this out. So Fire in the Night.
Yeah.
Fire in the Night. Okay.
It's one of those films that you hope nobody will watch. No, but.
Wow. Okay, I just want to make sure we're covering everything. This has been fantastic, by the way. I mean, the comments alone and all that, I've been saying it. All right, let's get your first. Let's go into, again. I know you mentioned it a couple times, and obviously the community. I remember hearing about this, and the community was obviously devastated and sad. But your long association with Guru Cliff.
I met Guru Cliff 1980 at Danny's school. The individual will remain nameless, but we used to line up with kicking shields, and we would, kick back and forth, and then we bow, and after 10 reps, rotate with the drum. And I was paired up with a big person who kept side kicking me almost through the wall, right? It's like, I'm going to kick her as hard as I can and see, if she can take it. And I would just kind of take it, but then we bowed and rotated, and Cliff paired up with him, and he says, no. He says, let me kick you like somebody your own size would kick you. And he kicked this person and sent him flying against the wall. That's when he became my best friend. And he used to tell him, look, when have you gotten in the ring, even with, tiny people, and how many times have you fought? So like basically saying that they needed to have more respect for, towards me. And, so we became very good friends. We, as I said earlier, we were inseparable for many, many years, and developed our systems together. And, I worked for him. I did many years that I did executive protection. He was through Cliff, because Cliff was not only a phenomenal martial artist, he had a executive protection company, and he was a bodyguard for so many rich and famous people. And many times he gave, would provide us with jobs when we needed to work. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
he's a dear friend, and truly will miss him.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Wow. That's right. Yeah. Jeez. Another thing, I want to get into now, just something that you seem to really be passionate about, and I've seen some of the videos on it. You being interviewed, I should say. Your whole thing on the women's self-defense. Why, you're advocating for it. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I think the reason it's important to me to teach women, it's that I think obviously women need the art, the skills, the street training more than men, because women are assaulted more often than men. And I just, over the years, and I've taught everywhere. I've taught different places, whether it was in Brasstown, North Carolina, or in Monte Carlo. And one of the things that I noticed, no matter where I was at, was that I have my kitty cat keeps touching. He's like, please feed me. I'm busy. Can't you see I'm busy, Tigger? I've got this cat that keeps going like this to like pay attention to me. So one of the things that I noticed, as I was saying, it's that too many women, regardless of socioeconomic level, don't believe in themselves. And when I say don't believe in themselves, when I think of what their value system is, it's like, it could be dependent upon cultural upbringing, and it's not even on a conscious level. I'm talking about an unconscious level, or subconscious level, where traditionally, maybe based on your culture, you were taught, we've been socialized and conditioned that women are one way versus men another way, although that is changing to a certain point. But I'm not referring to the exception. I'm referring to the, in general terms.
Sure.
And if it's okay, like I watched my mother her whole life take care of, there's 11 of us, kids, and always put us first. So certain behavior that is ingrained in us that, we're supposed to be a certain way, gender roles, may be appropriate in the home, but it's not appropriate in the street. And if you have been conditioned to be one way, that carries over. So if I ask a group of women, are you okay if a man was threatening you, or anyone for that matter, are you prepared? If you say, well, I carry a knife, are you prepared to take that blade, place it on his flesh, and cut to the bone? Are you prepared to do that? And they're like, oh, I some would say, hell yes. But more would say, no way.
Yeah.
Then I asked the question, how many of you have children? And they'll raise their hand up. And I said, now, if I were to take and ask, what's your daughter's name? Okay. They give me a name. And I said, okay, if somebody came up to Susie and put a knife at her throat, or grabbed her, or you walked into her bedroom and there was some stranger on top of her, what would you do? Without hesitation, they would just rip that guy's heart out. They wouldn't hesitate.
Sure.
So the point here is, if you're prepared to fight for someone else, but you're not prepared to fight for yourself, what is the value there? Are you not as valuable as your child? And if something happens to you, then who's going to take care of that child?
Right.
I refer to it as a lioness within, which is the title of my book, that we all have that within us. But the question is, how do we draw on that? It's there. Everybody has it. It comes, it's just a question of, because of lack of training, you haven't been prepared. And I get so fed up with hearing people tell women, well, you shouldn't carry a weapon, you shouldn't carry a blade, you shouldn't carry a gun, you shouldn't do this, it's just going to be taken and used against you, when in reality, it's not a gender issue. It's a training issue. More probably male officers get shot with their own gun than in any other situation. And it's not, and they're men, they're not females. So the issue is lack of training or not proper training. So I just think, women need the skills. And along with that, I always say, no matter how thin you slice the bologna, there's two sides to it. The other side to that is the frustration in working with women. The frustration is trying to get women to find value in it. When you're promoting a self-defense seminar and almost nobody shows up, and I go, wait a minute, I can't give this away for free. Here I am, 3-time world champion now, and I'm an expert at what I do, and I could try to make money doing this, and I try to donate time, and people show up, but you know what I'm saying? It's not, you would think that women would be showing up, and when you speak to them, they go, oh, self-defense workshop. I did that 2 years ago. It's like, it's off my list. And the point is that they don't get it. They don't realize that learning how to defend yourself, there's layers to it. One is the mental and the psychological training, but also is the physical. Just like you want to become a good salsa dancer, a good tennis player, a good anything, it's repetition and time invested. But for self-defense seminars, for some reason, we don't get it. We think, okay, I'm good. I've done.
Yeah, I know. It's like you just said, they check it off on their list without even thinking that it needs to be maintained.
Right.
Like anything else they're doing in their life, that they would do frequently, or they would make it a priority as far as repetition, and then it's non-existent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. And then, like you said, in your case, I mean, somebody that's world renowned, and I know, and they don't see the value in it. Wow. Okay. So what do you well, I guess we could make this kind of fold these two into one question. How do we make that more a priority? And B, how do we get more women into FMA?
Well, I feel that, and I have quite a few women. I have young girls at my school besides adults. I have more women. Partly, I think people gravitate towards instructors that they identify with. So me being female, but for years it's always been predominantly male. Out of the majority of my black belts, I think I only have 3 females that are black belts. But I think that for the Filipino martial arts, Guru Dan used to always tell me, women are better at this because we have more of the flexibility in the wrist. We have more agility. We have, you could be really good at this. So I think you have to find the benefits of the art, and it has to be something that they find a value. For training, if you train, you're going to stay fit. Most women want to stay in shape. Well, this is a way that you can stay in shape, but you have an added benefit. You're building your reflexes, you're building strength, you're building muscle strength, you're building muscle stamina. And this is stuff that you need. Like, in a women's self-defense course, I tell women, look, if you can't do a single push-up, think about this. If you can't do a push-up, then how are you going to push somebody off of you? So you wake up in the middle of the night, somebody's on top of you that you didn't.
No, I know, and you can't
how
do
it. How are you going to come off of you if you can't do a push-up? And they weigh twice as much as you. So, you think of benefits, training, I call it combat fit. We had a conditioning course called Combat Fit, which is preparing you for the fight. Because in women's self-defense, I feel that's really neglected, that women are not told that, you can take this 4-hour workshop and learn this, what to do if somebody chokes me, if somebody grabs my wrist, but I don't want to say it's BS, but in a way it is, because if you go to punch someone and you are so fragile because you have no muscle strength or stamina that when you try to punch some guy, you're gonna break your hand.
I am like totally agree with
You
you.
have to teach them. You have to teach women that they need to get fit. They need to be fit enough to be able to sustain the punishment that they're gonna. To be able to take the punishment that they may sustain in a physical altercation. And
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to somebody about this, and I'm just interested in your opinion. I'm not saying I 100% concluded this, but I do feel strongly that, in my opinion, women's self-defense should be weaponized. Like, I don't care if it's a knife, obviously gun being the quintessential, but absent of gun, knife, palm stick, tactical pen, but something that, and am I off base thinking that?
absolutely, I totally agree with you. In
Okay.
fact, when I train, do women's self-defense, the number one weapon that I teach, if they don't have a weapon, is elbows. Everything is with elbow. I don't teach to punch. And I think that every woman should learn to use a knife and a gun. I've always, back in the 80s, I was writing in Black Belt magazine about firearms is a martial art. And you can find one of my old articles that I was saying you should incorporate firearms training into your martial arts training. If again, another principle I learned from Guru Dan was you don't have to learn to use a blade because you're going to cut, slice, and dice someone, but your chances of surviving a knife
When they see you pull it out,
greater if you know how to use a knife.
Yeah.
So for women, the problem is that they carry these weapons and they're not trained to use them.
Not only that, though, like when I go over with my students, because I am one of the fortunate ones that have like 3 females, and when I tell them is like, and they're pretty gung ho, you know what I mean? But what I tell them is, man, okay, you got it on you, but you need to know where to access it. You can't have that bomb your pocketbook where you're digging, and all of a sudden here comes a haymaker, and now there's no defense against you. You're knocked out.
Well,
So I'm like,
would be justified in cutting and slicing him if he's punching her. So you have to also teach that, the force continuum and escalation of force. You have to. There was a time where women, you could get away with shooting somebody and who didn't have.
I'm just for deployment sakes, like know where it is. You
right.
know what I mean? In conjunction, like, okay, they're carrying something, but knowing like where to access it, God forbid, something, went wrong or what have you. But
it's like, you're right. It's like carrying a firearm doesn't do you any good if your firearm is in the front of your car and the ammo's in the trunk.
Yeah, underneath your seat somewhere, and
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It has to be accessible, absolutely. But I completely, I have the same belief. I think that women should be taught there's a variety of weapons, but the knife is the most available, accessible tool, implement that could be used in a self-defense situation. And it's an incredible weapon. And but it requires training. And to me, it's more mental than it is physical, because I've always taught that it doesn't take any skill for somebody to cut you. It takes the mindset and the intention. If my intention is to cut you, I'm going to cut you.
Yeah.
The skill lies in not being cut. We're trying to do as much as possible to neutralize the attack.
Right.
You don't have to be a Filipino martial artist and which I believe Filipino martial arts are like the most phenomenal with the blade. But you don't have to have that skill level. In fact, it's unpredictable patterns of movements that will get you.
It's the unexpected is what's going to get you.
And that's the beginners. That's why beginners hurt more advanced people, because if you think about it, if you're a trained martial artist, no matter how, I don't want to say bad your punching is, if you throw a punch, a jab, it's going to be somewhere somewhere there.
Somewhere in that area,
An
yeah.
untrained person, you expect it coming straight down line of attack. If you're untrained, I mean, they can be coming from around here. You don't know where they're
Yeah,
coming
there's some crazy stuff that you might
Exactly.
see. Yeah.
Those are the punches that will get you. And
Yeah,
it's
the unexpected, the unknown. Right,
exactly.
right. Yeah. I'm so glad that you feel that way, because I was like, because sometimes you bring up, oh man, what do you mean it's, self-defense should be weaponized? And I'm like, I mean, come on. You get let's say average woman, $120. Here comes an angry 200-pound guy. And even if the woman had some training, like basic, let's say she had like how to break fall. Let's say she even had that and long guard from a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu perspective. The bottom line is, though, the force, the mass, the weight, the difference, all that, it's just at some point, to me, yeah, weaponized. Wow, that was refreshing. Good.
I think even 120 pounder against 120 pounder makes a big difference. That's why we say women need to learn to cheat. We have to be vicious. And if you think of mindset, if 0 is here and 100 is here, and a person that's angry is at 100 and you're at 0, kind of in la la land, you have to be able to wake up and match it that quick. And that takes certain amount of training. Although some people are straight smart and have it, but you still training helps.
No, people have to go see you.
People will what?
People have to go see you. We have to get your name out here and get you worldwide. So let's go. So future. All right. Again, this has been fantastic. Future. All right. Assuming this mess that we're in, like someday ends. Like we don't hear about it. We're not contained by it. We're not controlled by it. We're not governed by it. What what are future goals on that? I mean, will you get back doing seminars, movies, articles? What's in store?
I will definitely be on the seminar circuit. Everything got shut down. I had booked 6 months out and all that ended. So for me will be definitely teaching and training, looking to train with new people. And, I forever want to keep learning. And what I did during this close, since I couldn't physically train with people, I decided to take 3 college courses just for fun. To keep my mind sharp, which I just ended this week. So now I know what it is to be a college student again. And it was horrific trying to learn to go online. And I was taking like business law and business English. And I thought, oh my God, what did I get myself into? But it was too late to drop. So
braver person than me.
Yeah, so I finished the courses. But that's kind of keeps your mind sharp. You have to keep reading is important. Training your mind. And, for me, I've enjoyed having some downtime because, as those that have schools know what I'm talking about. If I just retired from Oxnard College last year. I was a academic counselor. So I would do my 8 to 5 and then rush home and then change and then be at the dojo every year.
Go teach. That's a long day.
And that would happen for years and years. So now to, not having the evening school every single night, it just, allows you to do other things. And so I don't believe in wasting time. I stay busy. So I redirect. I always think of a chameleon. You adapt and you don't sit around at home. You find some other way to, I always think there's just, there are obstacles. You just have to find a way around. You don't retreat. You never retreat. You go around it. And, it's like a high reference point Paxao. You just, you stop and you keep going through, right? You don't disengage and go, okay, how can I find a different way around? You just, you connect and keep going through it.
It's a good analogy. But so do you ever come out to the East Coast for seminars?
If I'm invited, I haven't been. I was in New Jersey a couple years back, but I haven't.
Where in New Jersey?
With John Del Vecchio. For sport jiu-jitsu, because I had a whole jiu-jitsu phase in my last few years.
Okay, that name sounds so for John
Del Vecchio. He's a sport jiu-jitsu champion and has a school and out there.
Okay.
So I spent a few years being assistant coach to the sport jiu-jitsu team.
Yeah.
USA team. So that's another chapter in my life.
Yeah. No, just think. Yeah, I mean, wow. Jeez, we're gonna. So what about as far as like, so you'll get back to doing seminars, obviously teaching and what have you. Any other like, future projects, goals that are coming down?
Right, for me, writing, completing my platform that I've been working on, but doing some more books and just really evolving my curriculum because we didn't talk about this a lot, but basically it's a very simple concept that I teach, and I refer to as commonality in training, where we can talk about how things progress, but we don't necessarily get to work on it. So, if you take that one angle, how do you really progress from a counter to a lock to a disarm to a takedown to a control based on range? And that's a very simple formula, but you have to really look at that and say, how do I do that? And how do I go stick against stick? And how do I go stick against empty hand? And, knife against knife, knife against empty hand. So you progress based on range. And that's what I've been working on for years, just really looking at based on what I've learned from all my teachers and saying, how can I take what they taught me and develop the structure to make it so much easier for somebody to learn? And that way, where maybe it took someone 5 years to get through all this, now maybe it takes only 2 years. So.
Wow. So here's a question I'd like to ask. I don't ask everybody it, but for the most part, I ask most people I have on here. What do you think we could do? As far as our community is concerned, like how can we improve our community, FMA community as a whole? Obviously, depending on the system and all that, the politics. I mean, just by doing these interviews, I mean, what I've been exposed to on the back end that doesn't make the actual interviews. When I hear it's some of it's like pretty amazing. Stuff I can't actually mention on here because of names and systems, what have you. But outside of that, though, what do you think how can we, one of the things, reason why I started this show was not only to bring exposure to the FMA community and give us a voice, which we're lacking, but also to bring some commonality and just collectiveness and unity within our community. You got any thoughts, like far as like what do you think we could do?
I think that you're absolutely right. And like I completely would never go there. And there's been a lot of politics, and I've even dealt with a lot in my own life. And I have tried to avoid politics because some of us just want to learn. Like I just see myself as a lifelong student. I get so excited to learn something new. I love learning, and I will always, I think the minute you stop learning, you think you've arrived and there's nothing more for you to learn, then you might as well, it's over. So for me, what keeps me fresh and what keeps me feeling excited and that you want to get up every day and see what's out there is curiosity, is saying, what else is out there? How can I become better? At my age, in 45 plus years in the martial arts, I'm constantly asking, what can I do to be better? And so that I can be a better guide to my students. What can I do? But I think, I wrote an article on this probably decades ago, and it still holds true. I think the idea of respect, in a lot of ways, part of it has to do with the whole UFC. And I was a judge at the first couple. I looked at what was going on, and I thought, this is not my cup of tea. Only because, well, there weren't a lot of rules back then, but when they first started. But I feel that the principles that a lot of the martial arts, or part of the martial arts that we talk about, like, integrity, loyalty, courtesy, all these values, somewhere along the line, in some cases, not all, because there's a lot of great schools and great teachers, but it's sort of been forgotten. It's not emphasized. You were seeing this a lot in UFC where, the camaraderie, the respect, it's just kind of like not there. And I think that's a really big part of martial arts. And, like I have always said, I see the world through the eyes of a martial artist. The martial arts have been huge for me because it's helped me in so many aspects of my life. And the primary way is to be able to troubleshoot and problem solve whatever it is that you're dealing with in life, to look at something, okay, how do I develop a plan of action to survive this, to accomplish this? whatever it is. But I think that if we just went back to our original values and start maybe pushing those more and teaching kids, teaching the younger generation what it means, what does it mean to be respectful, to respect people, and to realize and hope that people are, because there's a lot of egos in the martial arts world. We know that, right? A lot of people, martial art, and I'm going to say, I mean, maybe I'm popular for saying this, but martial arts attracts a lot of insecure people and a lot of people who want other people to bow down to them. I said it. It's the truth.
No, it is like
in it for that. And it takes all kinds, right, to make the world go around. But for those people that's not why they're there. They're there because they genuinely want to make a difference. When somebody comes up to you, and I was having this conversation with a brother of mine today, and he said, somebody came up to me in the store because he was also a counselor, and he said, and thanked me. He says, honestly, I don't even remember, but it probably was 30 or 40 years ago. But when you know that your teaching or your actions made such an impact in somebody's life, that it made a difference for them. To me, that's why I do what I do. It's like giving a Christmas present. Some people present. Right. You just watch the kids open the present, and that's the reward for you. It's the excitement of someone. So I think in the martial arts world, we need to get back in touch with that and really ask ourselves, like, why are we doing this? What's the why for us? Why are we doing? Why do you do what you do? And how can you continue to reinforce, just as I said earlier, things that we're teaching our kids, we need to be reminded. It's like, remember to remember, right? So that's how I feel about it.
No, I agree. It's funny, like when you brought up the UFC, like you see these young people, they're seeing how they talk, like when I say young people, like young martial artists who maybe watched the UFC show or whatever, and they're seeing the bad mouth thing and all that. And what really bothers me about that is, like, that's what they're seeing. So that's what they're seeing. Like, hey, it's okay to do that because they're doing it. So it's okay that if I bad mouth what he's doing because he's maybe doing a different style than me and all that. And man, I don't like where that can go. And I think we need more traditional aspect of martial arts brought back in. I agree. I think we need to return. And social media. Here's the thing: it's so easy on Facebook to get behind that keyboard and just start blasting away, because that person's not in front of you. And I don't know. I mean, I've seen it all, and it's just my phone. It's just.
I did it without knowing this. I don't know how much time we have left, but I kind of by mistake did an experiment at my dojo. I was teaching the kids' classes, very traditional Japanese, and we would do everything. We would do seiza, we would count Japanese, do Japanese commands, and I went through something where I thought, no more. We're going to get rid of all that, and I gave up the traditional way. We were still bowing in, but I noticed a change in the students. They weren't as respectful. It was just different when I stopped emphasizing. And about 6 months later, we had a staff meeting. I said, we need to go back to it. And they go, but it's not, you teach more than jiu-jitsu. Doesn't matter. The foundation is still for the kids' classes, jiu-jitsu. And we need to go back to, the meditation. We need to go back to bowing in, and we need to go back to yes, sir, no, sir, and everybody, synchronized, and we need to go back to using kibadachi or horse stance, because I was like, why are we punching out of a horse stance? We're not going to fight out of a horse stance. Well, because it builds attributes. And I started thinking, wait a minute, I started there and I didn't turn out too bad. And that's where I started. So we need to bring that back. And I noticed that the kids like that, and it worked better. So that's kind of an example of, they need structure, and we need the discipline, and we need the tradition. Out of respect for the art, we need that. And
I totally agree. I mean, and it's like with the adults, like on my forum, FMA discussion. Gee, I can't believe I need to try to remember that. It's not allowed. Like, you badmouth somebody, you speak ill of somebody, you profanity, you're gone. It's just right across the board. It's just not allowed. Like, I will not tolerate it. It's just it's not going to. I've seen other forums where it's okay. I shouldn't say okay, but you see where lines are crossed.
Yeah,
That's me. That's crazy. No, it's not allowed. You do it, you're gone. I don't care. You know what I mean? And I tell you, it's like 2,500 members and some close calls. You know what I mean? Where I've had to private message people, hey, can you remove that word? Hey, and they do it. But what's your point? So that's kind of like, I totally agree with you. Like within FMA discussion, I'm forcing that traditional effect in there. You know what I mean? Like it's just, it's got to start somewhere, right? Wow. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute joy, and obviously the comments speak for themselves. I mean, people have listed your book here and all that, and which I'm looking forward to checking out. By the way, oh, all right. Let me. I'm sorry. The Lioness Within. All right.
It's not. There's no techniques in it. It's all more.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. That's
it's
okay.
more on the mental and the psychological.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I'm already getting requests here to have you back on and all that. So when this miserable mess ends, would you ever be willing to come back on and do like demos with your students or whatever the case may be?
It's easier when you have a partner, as you know, in the Filipino martial arts.
No. I mean, no. When we get through this mess, bring you back on, and you could do have one of your students and all that, do demos and all that. Definitely understood. Yeah, when this ends, you have a partner for sure. But I try to keep the audience happy, and the audience is already demanding that you come back on. So
thank you, Jade. I'm barely being able to read some on the side there.
Oh my gosh, there's a ton here. Yeah.
And I want to forewarn you that you mentioned me having a YouTube. I'm really a Neanderthal when it comes to social media.
Okay.
I took a social media class recently thinking I was learning how to do a Facebook and how to do this. Well, it wasn't that type of class at all. It was a serious marketing class. So I still don't. So after the semester ended, I still don't know how. So YouTube and all that, I didn't set that up. Somebody else did. So I don't even monitor, but I will start trying to keep up with everything.
That's okay. And I mean, we got somebody here for an East Coast seminar. Yeah, Big John, we could bring her out. So I bring people, for seminars and all that. I collectively try to get with people, and we bring different people out. But
I think I've been in Connecticut.
Obviously, nothing is happening now because this miserable mess we're in, and which hopefully will end this year, hopefully. So. So what I do is I download this, put it on YouTube, and of course, I'll put it on your wall.
Well, I appreciate everyone tuning in, and
as do I. Thank you. Yeah. So, again, I want to thank you so much. Any closing thoughts?
I appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you for your comments. Unfortunately, I'm not, as I said, I'm sort of a Neanderthal when it comes to this. So I just realized, the comments are on the side, so I wasn't reading all of them, but thank you. I appreciate it. And it's like we all keep each other alive. And what I mean by that is if I were on here, nobody would be listening. What would be the point, right? So I appreciate the interaction, and it's nice. And it's going to be nice to get back out there and to just mix with people and share, and that'll be fun. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, I'm getting out to California. I mean, again, when this mess ends, out to the Los Angeles area. I want to see like Steve Grody. He's somebody I really want to see and meet and all that. And you're in that area as well, right? You're just
I'm in Ventura County. I'm like an hour north of Los Angeles.
Okay. It's not that bad, obviously. Okay. Yes, that's on the plate.
Kind of changed. Back in the day, we would drive 4 hours to train with someone.
I know.
Now
4
it's
hours.
You moved across town. I'm sorry, I can't.
I know. When you hear 2 hours or something, it's I know. But back then, right? You did what you had to do.
I used to drive to Stockton, which was about 300 miles to train on a weekend with Cabales and.
Yeah, 300 miles. Wow. Yeah, that's hours. Yeah, for sure.
Maybe more.
Yeah, I know. Wow. But All right. Well, thank you so much for coming
Thank
on. I
you.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank
And
you, everyone. It's nice
yeah,
hearing from everyone.
yeah, they were great comments. But yeah, I mean, I think you'll be happy to check them out. And again, so when this mess ends, we'll put you on the list that you were willing to come back on. So
Well, everyone stay safe and take care of
yeah,
yourselves.
I know.
Bye, Bram.
I want,
Betty Bram.
yeah, yeah, he's floating around here somewhere. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye. Wow, that was incredible. Unfortunately, in the beginning, it just turned off, so I have to try to figure out how to. It's like I think 6 minutes or something, so I had to restart this. So some of the beginning is ending. So I got to try to see if I can fuse the two together, or worst case scenario, I'm gonna have to do like a part one and part two. But next coming up, I'm supposed to have somebody on Wednesday. I haven't heard back from them. Saturday, having the Professor Giacano, what was supposed to occur last Saturday is going to be happening this Saturday. That's Professor Giacano, El Rejunis, Mambaki, and Mong Sostino. Those four are coming on Saturday. And then Sunday will be Kali Doug. On Sticks and Bones podcast. Does once a month. He'll be coming on Sunday, so it's gonna be a back-to-back episodes this coming weekend, and hopefully I'm gonna find out about Wednesday. And January's list also will be coming out shortly. Some big names: Eric Naus, Joan Bill McGrath, just to name a few. But anyway, thanks you guys for tuning in, the comments and all that, and I will hopefully see you guys next show. Thank you.